Hi everyone, Mature Simmer here. So I am back after my break away. So I have returned. Trying to figure out where I was at. I'm pretty sure it's in that location there. Oh, I need to mow first. I don't know what I'm doing. Can't pick up without mowing. Clearly out of practice here. So I'm probably going to be a little bit confused and lost here, because being gone for 8 days, really out of it for even more than 8 days, between travel and all that to where we were headed. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure I got the field ready, but pretty sure I'll find out here if that's accurate or not in a moment. I'll get over there and hop out of the tractor. There we go. That's where I was a bit confused, because I'm like, there should be some, visibility. So let's see. Need to fold that down. Turn that on. Turn that on. And then that should let me get over here. So go ahead and get all this mowed on over, and then I'll get myself set once I get over to the edge. Because as always, just kind of set my GPS by going down the road. Just makes it a little simpler, but at this point I figured I'd at least cut my way over there. So it looks like field 38 still not being actively used. Alright, so let me set my GPS, and I'm going to line myself up here. And we'll run it up, and then obviously as it starts to cut over, I'll worry about it then. You know what? What I didn't do was just verify. Yep. Perfect and perfect. So that's what I thought. But just wanted to be sure. So I'll start kind of moving over here, because otherwise it won't work on the edge, is what I've found out in the past. Oh boy, lag, my friend. Yeah, there we go. Nice mess up there. Always really exciting to see. Always thrilled when that happens. Once again, the sarcasm and the joy merge together. Alright. So just kind of want to run along the road here, get this cut. So the situation, if you recall, when I left, the silos were pretty full. I did not have time to sell, and also was kind of like, I don't need to rush to sell, because, either way, it's not as if I could get anything in. Wow, this is going to go who knows where again. I think we're good there. But given that I was going to be gone, I knew I'd have a field here that would be highly grown by the time I got back. Time again is a little... Actually, it might have... They might have synced the servers, now that I look at it. When I got on this morning, it was really early, or really late in August. I think it was like 20 hours or 21 hours. My goodness, this is just killing me with this lag. Okay. Think I got it. We'll see what it does. Hoping I'll be able to collect most of that. run this around again. We know we're kind of at 19 over 1920, because once again I kind of set myself on the street. Right, I want to avoid the trees if I can. Obviously the bush. Whoops, hold on. Too far, too far, too far. So I think I want to go here to 21. Oops, turning the wrong way. So I want to go that way. That should work and go right about where I was. Yeah, looks good. So we'll let this run down the field. But yeah, at this point the silos are full or within 1,000 liters of full. So I think one of the silos I had left enough that I could, that I was a little short. It looks like I've got like 5,000 liters that haven't processed, and it has stopped because it's out of space. But for the others, it's giving me material missing, but we're up high in the 560,000 range. So once again, because I can harvest a couple times here without filling those silos, at this point, since the silos are empty, I've got enough space to do that, because right now the selling price is pretty low. So as things start to creep up, what I'll start doing is selling in the winter. So this year is a little bit off. Missed a good portion of this year being on vacation. And once again, that was obviously understood, and I knew that was kind of where things were headed. Alright, so let me go over here, give myself enough of a run. I think we'll be good there. We'll run it around, we'll run up the next line. And so, apologize as I've been focused on driving around. Probably not the most coherent conversation, but it also probably doesn't help that I've not been doing anything for, as far as recording or anything, for over a week. So I'm a little out of practice of just talking and doing something at the same time. Alright, so that should get me going for a little while at least, more so than having to drive at the edge there. I'm going to have to move it over before I get all the way up at the north end of the field, but certainly less required focus than there was going up there. So yeah, at this point, not having any income, obviously, but going to be then having a good amount to sell this coming winter, and maybe even going into the spring. I don't know how much I can unload. My hope is, since I'm obviously across the street, I'll be able to run things pretty quickly. But the other challenge I'm going to have is I won't be able to run anything, so I think it's going to mess things up into next year, because like right now I'm full, so as I put things in, I'm not getting any production out these days. What I'll probably start doing though is maybe in October and November, maybe I'll start selling a little bit to at least get a little bit ahead, and then maybe I can get done in the winter. Because basically I should get about 200,000 into each silo each harvest. So I'm going to have like 400,000, and I should be able to get through that in a couple, well, in 3 days. It won't be in a couple. Alright, I think, yeah, well, that'll work. I'll get it on the way back when I come back up that row. So it'll mess me up for a little bit. Obviously, I have no idea what's been going on in generational farming as far as progress anybody's made or whatever. I took a quick look when I hopped on this morning, but it was so dark. I was just like, you know, I'm going to have time later today, and instead of trying to harvest in the dark, I'm going to go ahead and and try to work on it in the daylight, and little did I know that the server would be reset, so I could have gotten on earlier, but it's okay. So the big news that isn't really generational farming related, FSN, I've come back to a lot of messages about some new options in Farming Simulator Network, or FSN, which is what part of generational farming is in. I tend to be pretty happy with what we've got, so I haven't been looking for any changes, but they're looking for 24-day a year servers instead of 12. So basically, you know, it would be 2 days a month. To me, that's just going to drag things out. I'm not looking at running a bigger farm. That's one of the options, or one of the benefits they're kind of telling people about is, hey, it'll give you time to run a bigger operation. But I'm not looking to just spend more and more time in the game to make less progress. I'm fine with the 12 days. Now, you know, what I'm going to have to take a look at is to see, like, am I going to be one of a handful of people that are interested in doing that? I don't think that'll be the case, but right now I don't know. They basically, I think, sent this out 3-4 days ago and had kind of given everybody 7 days to respond, and part of it is, I think, what they're doing, it seemed to be, is they're also just trying to make sure they've got active people. So similar to what they did with generational farming, where they pushed us onto 3 servers, and, you know, we've got 8 people on here, and instead of having potentially 6 servers, even though we really only had 5 that were active, they're looking to consolidate down to get the count down to like 100 and 125 servers. And, you know, some of those then will switch based on voting and so forth to the quicker or the longer time cycle. So it would take twice as long to progress through a year. They're also giving the option then of people who are sponsors, i.e. mayors, who are heads of servers. If you make that contribution, you can actively have 2 farms. So some people might do a 24-day server, and I think that's really what they're allowing, is really that lets you maintain your 12-day but go to a 24-day. Once again, I'm not looking at expanding what I'm doing, so my intent, unless I'm not given a choice, is to stay on Hobo's Hollow and go forward as we've been doing that. It's just going to be a question of how things are going to work. Now, I've gotten contacted by someone who used to be on server 212. In the time I've been away, they're now not there anymore because they're transitioning to this 24-day. And I knew that they were a mayor on another server, but with that, they want to spend more of their time kind of figuring out what they're doing there, because part of the challenge to do that is basically your account gets wiped, where you basically start as if you have not been in FSN at all. So you get your $500,000 grant to start a farm, and you get put on a farm, and that's it. The other thing that they're toying with, or they're asking about, and I think they're toying with, it's probably the wrong word. I think they're going to do it. It's just a matter of how much interest they get, and therefore how many of these things will be around. But they're looking at what they're kind of calling realism servers, which are not going to allow customs. They're going to require people to buy things on the servers, kind of stay in game, and then things will be ratcheted up, and even like getting seeds and fertilizer and so forth, you're not going to be able to buy it in bulk. You'll have to buy it, and then there's going to be logistics companies that'll transport it to your farm. You'll have to pay them, you'll have to wait for it to get there, and so forth. And that's, for the most part, I think those are the big things that jumped out at me, of how that would work. It looks like they're potentially looking at having the banking system be players lending to other players, as opposed to, in the past, it's been just players that chose to run a bank, and I think had to apply for that and pay for that and got a little bit of a benefit. But based on how much cash you have, it will determine what you can lend to other players and so forth. So as I understand more, I'll probably in periphery share it in both the series that I'm doing in FSN. But because I'm not terribly focused or interested in that stuff, I may miss things. So I cannot claim I'm going to be the definitive source of what's new and going on in FSN there for the folks who want to get into that. And there may be things that I determine, yeah, you know, I'm going to do that if I can do it with my 12-day server. But if it all requires a wipe and a 24-day server right now, I'm saying I'd prefer not to do that. So we had to answer that within the 7 days. I've answered accordingly that I'm perfectly fine just continuing as is, and we'll see where it goes from there. But was not aware of anything like that in the works before I left for the trip 8 days ago, and kind of came back to a changed landscape. So right now I'm not expecting that any of this is going to change anything that you see here on the channel as far as what I'm doing as FSN content, because my intent is not really do anything different. I'm hoping they're not looking at switching the generational farming to go to 24-day cycles. Kind of used to how this is. I might be nice to progress a little bit slower, but once again, I don't know that I would expand. But I think what that would create is it would likely create a situation where I absolutely probably would fall down in the standings, because I'm not looking at working twice as hard, which is kind of what that would be. But I think you're going to have people who are like, well, now that I have 2 days per month, I'm going to do this thing that I wasn't going to do before, because I only had 3 days of harvest. Now I have 6 days of harvest. So for most people, if each season is 6 days, that means you've got at least 1 day of the weekend in every season, and so that may change how people look at things if they go to a 24-day cycle. And so I think that would shift what generational farming is. I just hope that for this cycle, to kind of leave that part as it is, because that would be a major change. And then maybe generational cycle 2.0 or generational farming 2.0, they could change that cycle if they wanted and say, generational farming is now going to the 24 days, especially if they find 75% of the player base is playing 24 days anyway. But I think if they do that, then they just continue to have the same problem, which is calendar overlap between main farm and others. That's the scoop of what I know so far. And it sounds like they're going to be doing just a lot of revamps on the site. So let me just focus on what I've got here. I'll talk about all the rest of the stuff or anything else more on the Hobo's Hollow series, or the main farm series that is now at Hobo's Hollow, because it does change what I'm doing with crops, because it sounds like they're revamping crop sales pretty substantially, and as of today I think they're shutting them down for an undisclosed amount of time as they do the revamp. So what that'll mean, obviously, is selling crops off the server isn't going to be possible, and it sounds like even when it is, we're not going to have these huge differences anymore, which I honestly then question, then what's the point of having them? Because if I'm basically dragging the crops to FSN Customs and not really getting a premium, or just getting a small premium, I mean, you're making that decision then of, do I want to drag these crops all the way there, or do I just sell them somewhere closer to my farm on server and then I think you'd be removing a large aspect of something that makes FSN unique. So I was surprised to see that. So we'll see what happens there. But we can't do custom sales here in generational farming, so that impact doesn't really matter. Although there was a comment that we might be able to do that in certain cycles and certain generations here, so they could go ahead and say we're going to do that, but they haven't so far in these two. And unless they're using a map that in essence is already in FSN, I think but editing the map and so forth, they'd have to take that into consideration if they'd want to go through all that just for generational farming or so forth. But the other part of the news in FSN is they're looking at like 12 new maps, and so maybe that'll come into play in some way here, because if they're editing them for FSN, it might be new maps that haven't been in before, but they might start cycling through generational farming first to kind of get a test run of where things are at and so forth, and allow the introduction of customs. But basically my plan today is pretty simple, so I think I've kind of given you what I can of what I know, but most of it is not generational farming specific, and it's kind of that unknown factor of what's going to end up somehow impacting us. Right now I think it will be little to nothing of what I shared, but that could change, so I just at least wanted to make you aware of what the situation was as you're following this, so it doesn't come as a shock to you if something moves and changes. But my plan is just harvest this grass, and then I'm going to be back here. I guess it would be the normal November cycle, so that's kind of what part of my thought too. It was dark in August when I got on, and I wasn't going to get the work done anyway before it changed over to September, so my thought was I'll just wait until it's lighter, and then I'll be kind of on that normal cycle where I do whatever it is, May, July, September, and November is my harvest for the grass. So that is the plan, and so I'm going to go ahead and keep doing that, and I will then see you next time once I'm back here, probably in November, doing the same thing and give you any updates I've got then. So I'll see you next time.